you ever wondered what secrets lie beneath the ocean's surface? Today we are diving into one of the most mysterious topics out there: underwater civilizations. Recent discoveries have stirred up debates among experts and left many of us questioning everything we thought we knew about history. From eerie ruins to astonishing structures hidden deep in the waters, these findings aren't just fascinating, they are downright terrifying. Starting off this list today, we have the Black Sea Labyrinth. Our first stop takes us to Europe's mysterious Black Sea, where we encounter something that looks straight out of a sci-fi thriller. A network of underwater passages that some are calling the Black Sea Labyrinth. High-resolution sonar imaging has uncovered complex patterns beneath the surface. These formations appear as if someone meticulously planned a maze, with channels, corridors, and interconnected rooms stretching across the seabed. While some experts suggest these could be natural formations, others argue that they might have been purposefully constructed. Could these underwater corridors have been designed as defensive structures, secret passageways, or even ritual spaces by an ancient civilization facing rising sea levels? The labyrinth's location is especially eerie because the Black Sea itself underwent dramatic changes about 7,500 years ago when a sudden influx of water transformed it from a freshwater lake to the saltwater sea we know today. This timing might coincide with a civilization trying to escape the rising tides, leaving behind mysterious hidden structures as a legacy of their existence. Our journey now takes us to the sun-kissed waters of the Mediterranean, where divers have uncovered what appears to be ancient temples submerged along the coasts of Italy and Greece. These underwater ruins feature elaborate carvings, column remnants, and intricate alignments that suggest they were once places of worship or communal gathering. Some of the structures are aligned with celestial events, indicating that their builders had a sophisticated understanding of astronomy. Although many of these temples are in a state of ruin, the precision of their construction challenges our assumptions about ancient technology. How did these early peoples achieve such architectural mastery without modern tools, and why were these sacred sites abandoned to the sea? Recent studies have shown that some of the temple's orientations correspond with rare astronomical events, possibly serving as ancient observatories. This revelation not only deepens the mystery, but also hints at a lost knowledge of the cosmos that these ancient builders possessed. The warm turquoise waters of the Caribbean have long been a favorite for vacationers, but beneath their sparkling surfaces may lie the remains of an entirely different kind of civilization. Recent underwater surveys near several lesser explored Caribbean islands have revealed stone structures and foundations that predate known historical records. These ruins suggest the presence of coastal settlements with advanced skills in architecture, navigation, and trade. Some researchers theorize that these ruins might represent a network of pre-Columbian societies that were once thriving along the Caribbean coastline. Their discovery challenges the traditional timeline of human settlement in the region and hints at a complex, interconnected world that existed long before European contact. Despite their potential importance, these sites have received relatively little attention compared to more famous underwater ruins. This oversight means that every new piece of evidence could dramatically reshape our understanding of ancient Caribbean cultures. Often overshadowed by more dramatic discoveries, the Baltic Sea holds its own set of underwater mysteries. In the cold, brackish waters of northern Europe, archaeologists have uncovered evidence of human activity that dates back thousands of years. Researchers have found remnants of structures ranging from potential ritual sites to what might have been entire settlements preserved in astonishing detail. The Baltic's unique conditions have allowed these features to remain intact, offering us a rare glimpse into a bygone era. Folk tales in this region have long spoken of sunken kingdoms and lost cities. Now, modern technology is starting to confirm that there could be grains of truth in these stories. The possibility that entire communities vanished beneath rising waters adds an eerie dimension to the natural history of the Baltic Sea. Some underwater sites in the Baltic have been found near ancient shipwrecks and trade routes, suggesting that these lost communities were once a part of a broader network of exchange and cultural interaction across northern Europe. Heading over to North America, divers in the Great Lakes region have reported encountering mysterious stone circles resting on the lake beds. These formations, while not as famous as their terrestrial counterparts, hint at sophisticated prehistoric activity. Some researchers believe these underwater stone circles may have been constructed for astronomical or ceremonial purposes. The arrangement of the stones appears to correlate with celestial events, suggesting that ancient peoples might have used them to track the movements of the stars and the planets. Although these structures remain relatively unexplored compared to well-known stone circles on land, they raise fascinating questions about the cultural and scientific knowledge of North America's early inhabitants. Were these circles used as calendars, religious sites, or perhaps markers for territorial boundaries? Recent dives and sonar imaging have revealed that some of these stone formations are far more extensive than previously thought, hinting at the possibility of a widespread tradition that has been kept hidden beneath centuries of water and sediment. Next up, we are diving deep into the realm of underwater cave art found in remote regions such as parts of the Mediterranean and the Yucatan Peninsula. These hidden galleries offer a silent yet powerful testimony to ancient cultures. In submerged caves, explorers have discovered intricate petroglyphs and paintings etched into rock surfaces. These artworks depict mysterious symbols, human figures, and animals. Some experts believe that these artworks might represent a form of communication or even a lost language. The symbols don't match any known scripts, raising the possibility that they could be the last remaining traces of an underwater civilization's cultural and religious beliefs. The isolation and inaccessibility of these underwater caves have allowed the art to remain remarkably well preserved. Each new discovery not only adds a piece to the puzzle of ancient human expression, but also deepens the mystery surrounding the civilizations that created them. Traveling to the coast of Japan, where off the island of Yonaguni lies an underwater structure that looks almost too perfect to be natural. Discovered in the 1980s, the Yonaguni monument features remarkably straight edges, sharp angles, and terraces that some claim resemble steps or even ancient pyramids. Researchers are divided. Some believe this is a naturally occurring formation shaped by tectonic activity and erosion, while others argue that its geometric precision points to human craftsmanship. Proponents of the man-made theory suggest that the precise right-angled formations and the apparent staircase features could indicate that an advanced civilization once lived or at least built something here. Recent sonar mapping and 3D reconstructions have revealed details that some experts argue would be nearly impossible to form naturally. Whether you lean toward the natural or the man-made explanation, the Yonaguni monument is a striking example of how the ocean can hide mysteries that challenge conventional archaeology. Next, let's head to the Bahamas, where an underwater formation known as Bimini Road has fueled countless speculations about Atlantis, the legendary lost city. Found in 1968 near North Bimini Island, this curious linear arrangement of stone blocks stretches along the seabed. To some, its layout seems too deliberate to just be a random collection of rocks. Supporters argue that the aligned stones, with their subtle interlocking edges, might be remnants of a sophisticated road or wall built by an ancient civilization, perhaps even a piece of Atlantis itself. Skeptics, however, attribute the formation to natural sedimentary processes and fracturing of the local limestone. Advanced underwater imaging techniques have revealed what might be additional hidden linear structures beneath the main formation, suggesting that there is more to this site than meets the eye. Whether it's an ancient roadway or an elaborate natural occurrence, Bimini Road keeps the mystery of Atlantis very much alive. Next, we are talking about Thonis Heraklion. Not all underwater discoveries are wrapped in myth. Some, like the ancient Egyptian city of Thonis Heraklion, have well-documented historical roots. Once a bustling port city near Alexandria, Thonis Heraklion sank beneath the waves after centuries of neglect and natural calamities. Rediscovered in the early 2000s, this lost city has yielded statues, inscriptions, and everyday artifacts that paint a vivid picture of life during its heyday. The ruins offer a rare glimpse into the maritime trade networks of the ancient world, This site's extensive remains not only showcase the architectural prowess of ancient Egyptians, but also underscore how natural events, like earthquakes and flooding, can erase entire civilizations from our maps, only for them to reappear centuries later as underwater time capsules. Some of the inscriptions found here hint at interactions with other ancient cultures, suggesting that this city was a cosmopolitan melting pot. Its rediscovery has helped historians piece together trade routes and cultural exchanges that spanned the Mediterranean. Our final discovery takes us off the coast of Gujarat in India. Underwater archaeologists have discovered ruins that many believe are linked to the fabled city of Dwarka, a metropolis steeped in myth and mentioned in ancient texts. Excavations in the region have revealed stone structures, remnants of urban planning, and artifacts that suggest a thriving city once existed here. Some carbon dating techniques have pointed to dates that, if accurate, push back the timeline by thousands of years, making this one of the oldest urban settlements known to man. The story of Dwarka has long been dismissed as a myth, until now. The underwater ruins hint at a civilization with advanced knowledge of construction and urban planning, and they mesh intriguingly with ancient narratives about divine cities and heroic eras. Researchers have also discovered intricate network patterns that resemble ancient harbors and trade routes, suggesting that Dwarka wasn't isolated, but was a significant hub for maritime trade in its time. The evidence is tantalizing, and while debates continue, Dwarka's submerged remains force us to rethink the boundaries between myth and history.
The apex predator of the sea? Well, apparently yes. Back in 2003, scientists tagged this massive great white shark. They were studying temperature changes in the ocean. Well, several months passed, and the researchers found the shark's tag washed up on shore in Australia. They took a look at the tag's information, which revealed that about 4 months after they had tagged the shark, it had suddenly plunged 1,900 feet below. There was also a sudden spike in the shark's temperature, so it looked like something had attacked the shark and dragged it down before, putting it in its mouth. So the question was, what the hell had managed to attack and consume a 9-foot great white shark? Now, there are rare cases of cannibal great whites, and there are great white sharks that are much larger than 9 feet, so that was a possibility. Again, that's rare though. Great whites usually don't attack one another. Another possibility is that something else attacked the shark. Something else that we'd never want to run into.
Next up, we've got eggs and active volcanoes. In July of 2022, marine researchers decided to explore an ancient deep-sea volcano off Canada's Pacific coastline. And what they found was pretty cool. First of all, they discovered that the 3,600 foot tall volcano, 1,100 meters, was actually still active. And second of all, that it was covered in around 1 million eggs the size of American footballs. What kind of eggs? Skate eggs. And no, I'm not referring to a hockey player's breakfast, but rather a little-known sea creature closely related to sharks and rays. The specific skates on the volcano are Pacific white skates, and they're super cool to look at. These creatures, along with many others living around the volcano, are able to survive and thrive because of the warm, nutrient-rich waters produced by the active volcano. The mystery here is how the hell this thing has stayed active for so long. How did we not know about it until now, and what else is out there? I bet James has some answers.
1968 was not a good year to be in a submarine. That year, 4 subs vanished, all within a relatively short time frame. The subs were the Israeli INS Dakar, the French Minerva, the Soviets K-129, and finally, America's USS Scorpion. Now, we don't know exactly what happened to these submarines, but this was the Cold War, so there's a good chance the fate of the US and Soviet subs had something to do with that. The Israeli sub ceased communication on January 25th of that year though, and the wreckage wasn't found until 1999. And just 2 days after the Israeli sub had originally gone missing, the Minerva vanished in the waters off Toulon in southern France. It was just an hour away from port, and this one wasn't found until 2019.
Next up, we've got the mysterious methane leak of the deep blue sea. doesn't sound ominous or damning at all. Not. In August of 2022, researchers discovered that a massive amount of methane was bubbling up from the bottom of the deepest point in the Baltic Sea. You know, where the Baltic Sea anomaly that may or may not be an alien spaceship lies. But I digress. The team in charge of monitoring the methane reported that it was, and I quote, basically bubbling everywhere, covering an area of roughly 7.7 square miles or 20 square kilometers, which is around 4,000 soccer fields. And it's all happening at a depth of about 1,300 feet or 400 meters. Whole lot of numbers going on here. Anyways, researchers believe that the methane is coming from a large amount of decaying organic matter lying on the seafloor. But like, there's a lot of methane, so at this point in time, they aren't 100% sure. And they also have absolutely no clue as to why it is rising so high up. So it looks like we've got a mystery on our hands.
Back in 2015, the EV Nautilus, a San Pedro-based research vessel, discovered something pretty insane in the Gulf of Mexico, an incredibly deadly underwater lake 3,300 feet below the surface. It's this pit of high salinity water and dissolved methane, and anything that goes too close doesn't make it out alive. They just get pickled. The underwater lake formed millions of years ago when the area was much shallower and covered in salt beds left behind by evaporating water. Over time, these salt layers got buried under sediments, and the pressure caused cracks, allowing oil, gas, and super salty brine to seep out. This brine is so salty and dense that it doesn't mix well with the surrounding seawater. Instead, it forms its own underwater lakes, rivers, and even waterfalls. And around the edges of this brine pool, mussels really thrive actually. They cling to the mineral deposits, and these mussels have a special relationship with bacteria that live on their gills. The bacteria use gases like methane and hydrogen sulfide, which seep from the ocean floor to produce energy for the mussels. Now, while the mussels can live near the brine pool, the brine itself is extremely toxic to most sea life. It contains very little oxygen and high levels of harmful chemicals like hydrogen sulfide and methane. Any fish or sea creature that ventures into the brine is quickly killed and preserved by the super salty water, which is 4 times saltier than the surrounding ocean. It's really cool. You look at images of this place and there's all these like crabs that have been sitting there for like who knows how long. It's like a graveyard.
Next up, we've got the world's loneliest fish, aka the deepest dwelling fish, which just so happens to look incredibly cool. The species, believed to be an unknown species of snailfish, was discovered in April of last year, 2023. Scientists were able to capture video of the fish feeding in the Izu Ugasawara Trench near Japan at a depth of 27,349 feet. It was a groundbreaking discovery for marine researchers who up until then had only ever seen fish at a depth of about 500 feet above where this species was found. So how the heck do these fish survive at a depth packing such immense pressure that it would cause you and I to crumple up like a shiny ball of tinfoil? Well, I'll tell you. Snailfish are incredibly adaptive, so adaptive in fact that they have replaced their scales with a gelatinous layer that helps to absorb the pressure. And their chemical makeup has adapted to protect their cells from the pressure as well, so they're pretty much set. But it begs the question of whether or not we find an even deeper fish with even more gelatinous bits next year. Here's hoping.
Can't do a deep sea mystery video without mentioning at least one shipwreck, and this one is very intriguing because it seemed like there was some sort of bad energy attached to it. In the Gulf of Mexico, once again, there's a shipwreck that seems to bring nothing but bad luck to anyone who tries to explore it. ExxonMobil discovered this wreck while laying down a pipeline, and that was the last bit of good fortune they had near the site. When a team was put together to check out the wreck, everything started going wrong. Their exploration submarine malfunctioned just as it was about to dive. Problems ranged from video monitors failing every time they turned on the thrusters, to the sonar breaking down and the hydraulics going crazy, one after another. Then the Navy got involved and sent their own research submarine. This sub had its own set of issues as well. It pretty much destroyed its own rover as soon as it hit the water, and when it finally reached the wreck, its robotic arms were too short to grab anything of use. And these are just a few examples of the long list of failed attempts to explore the wreck. It seems like anyone who tries to get close to it is doomed to fail in some bizarre or frustrating way.
Next up, we have some unusual behaviors being displayed by a new mother. In June of 2022, marine researchers witnessed something they had never seen before while tracking a female squid who had just given birth in the waters of Monterey Bay, California. The mama squid was observed carrying her babies. Why is this strange? Well, because up until now, squids have only ever been observed abandoning their babies. Not in a CPS way though, it's just not in their nature to care for their young. And it has always been believed that once a squid lays its eggs, it leaves them to develop on their own. But of course, now there is video evidence proving that that is not always the case. Scientists observing the behavior speculated that maybe the mother was spooked, perhaps by the remotely controlled rover used to observe her, and she felt as though she needed to take extra precaution to ensure the safety of her offspring. But at the end of the day, they didn't ask her, so we really don't know the answer.
We've all heard about the legend of Atlantis. Well, Japan may have an Atlantis of its very own, Yonaguni Monument. This mysterious structure was discovered in 1986 by diver Kihachiro Aretake off the coast of Yonaguni Island in Japan. It's been heavily debated as to whether this place was naturally forming or not ever since. It's located about 60 feet beneath the ocean's surface. The monument consists of these massive stone blocks arranged in a way that really does look like it was done deliberately. You see what look like terraces and steps, all these columns and walls. The main structure is something that almost looks like a pyramid. This was why it's known as the Yonaguni Monument. And ever since these formations were first discovered, there's been this idea floating around, no pun intended, that the Yonaguni Monument is part of the remnants of a sunken city belonging to some prehistoric advanced civilization, like the lost continent of Mu, for example, dating back around 10,000 years. Mu's existence has never been 100% verified, and it's kind of in the same vein as Atlantis or Lemuria, but folks like university professor and researcher Masaki Kimura believe that the precision and arrangement of the stone blocks go far beyond what could occur naturally, and that these formations are likely from an ancient human settlement now submerged beneath the waves. But there are plenty of skeptics on the other side who say that it's all just formed naturally. They argue that the formations are more likely a result of some tectonic activity, erosion. People are just looking too deeply into it. Pareidolia, we look at things we don't understand and we go, oh, that looks like a house or a column of some kind, stairs. Well, I don't know. Personally, I look at these photos and I don't know, those look like stairs to me, but what do you guys all think?
And finally, to finish us off today, we have the mystery that is, how the hell are animals able to survive and actually thrive on the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, aka the GPGP? In 2018, while studying debris collected from what is essentially a floating island made of garbage, two scientists noticed something strange. Very tiny marine animals including crabs and anemones, animals that are normally seen on beaches and along the coast. So how the heck did they end up all the way out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean? No one actually knows. As a general rule of thumb, the open ocean is not at all a suitable environment for small animals such as crabs and anemones because there is not a lot of shelter to help them defend against predators. But now, all of a sudden, it seems as though these small animals have found shelter in our old bottle caps and chip bags. But again, how did they get there? Because surely these animals would not have been able to swim all the way out into the open ocean and then all the way up to the garbage patch. And yet it appears as though a whole new thriving ecosystem does very much exist there. Of course, it's possible that these animals latched onto the plastic when it first entered the ocean and then held on for months as it journeyed out to the GPGP, but again, that doesn't really line up with previously observed behaviors. Really, the whole thing is just one big, what's going on?
What are we looking at here? When I first saw this thumbnail, I thought this was a fishing net, but no, this is some kind of living organism. This incredible piece of footage was shared by Tahoe Deep on YouTube. The creature is some kind of siphonophore, a class of marine animals that contains 175 species that we know of anyway. As for exactly what species this one is, we're not sure. From what I've seen, siphonophores can look vastly different between species. What we do know is that this video was captured in the Gulf of Mexico, about 4,000 feet deep, or just over 1,219 meters deep. I've never seen a creature like this in my life. It reminds me of one of those old school iTunes visualizers or like Windows screensavers where you'd have like a trippy animation going on, kinda. A very odd, obscure reference, but I'm sure some of you will get it. Sperm whales and giant squids, some of the largest animals in the ocean. Footage of either is incredible to see, but how about the aftermath of a battle between the two? This footage was shared by EcoWatch Discovery Mauritius. As you can clearly see, a group of whales are coming back from a hunt, and one of them has the remains of a giant squid in its mouth. Getting up closer, you can see that its tentacle is still wrapped around the whale. It's pretty incredible footage. It's rare to see video of giant squids at all, let alone one in the mouth of a massive sized sperm whale. Turns out these animals fight a lot. They're both huge predators that are often locked in battles for survival. Based on this footage, I'd be placing my bets on these sperm whales. At our number 3 spot, we have the Mariana Trench Meg. Now this video is very much genuine, and I just find it really creepy. The idea of being lost deep beneath the sea and having this nasty thing creep up on you is pretty spine-tingling. This footage here was shared to YouTube by Deep Sea Oddities. It shows footage taken by equipment from a Japanese marine biology study about a mile underwater in the Mariana Trench. We see a really creepy looking shark swim into frame. It almost looks like a zombie shark or something to me. Nothing cute about this guy. I just kind of cringe watching the footage actually. It just gets too close to the camera for comfort, you know? Now apparently that's a baited cage in the frame there that it's swimming up to, which makes this shark pretty damn large. It doesn't look like it's been missing any meals. All I can say is I'm glad we don't live in the world of SeaQuest. Bet you weren't expecting to see a SeaQuest reference on this video. Now it turns out this creepy looking creature is actually called a Greenland shark. Here's another footage of a Greenland shark. Definitely an eerie looking animal, but incredibly fascinating. First off, these things are huge. One of the largest sharks in the ocean. They can grow up to about 21 feet or 6.4 meters long, sometimes more, and they can weigh over 2,200 pounds. Already terrifying. But here's the part that totally blows my mind. These sharks can live incredibly long. In fact, they're the longest living known vertebrate on Earth, with a lifespan of 250 to 500 years. That means there could be a Greenland shark out there right now that was alive well before the United States was founded. As for what they eat, they're apex predators. They hunt fish, seals, and basically whatever they can find. They live in some seriously deep water, around 650 to 3,000 feet down, and sometimes even deeper. So they've been difficult animals to study and are rarely ever seen. Take a look at this strange object flying by the camera. Just what the hell was that? This is a very strange video. It was captured by a remotely operated vehicle back in 2002 off the coast of Senriku, Japan. The thing passes by way too fast to determine what it is. It's not even clear if this is a living creature or some kind of object. What we're looking at here could be a USO, an unidentified submerged object. It's sleek looking, almost like a disc, and it's incredibly bright, so much that you can't make out any detail on it, if there even is any at all. So could this just be a ray of light? Well, it doesn't appear to be, for one. I mean, it does look like a solid object or organism. Plus, this footage was taken 421 meters down, or just over 1,381 feet. Not super deep, but enough that some ray of light from above wouldn't penetrate the water like this. According to the NOAA, or the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, light may be detected as far as 1,000 meters down in the ocean, but there is rarely any significant light beyond 200 meters. So, was this just a very fast fish, or something else entirely? This is a really cool piece of footage. Just what is this creature attacking this submersible? The footage was taken at a depth of around 1,280 meters, or 4,200 feet. Something had clearly tried to latch onto the vehicle. As for what it is, well, we get a better look moments later. What you're looking at here is a flasher squid. Not much of a mystery why it's called a flasher squid. They have two photophores at the tips of their heads that flash. These are one of the largest squids in the world and are among the biggest known bioluminescent creatures on Earth, reaching lengths of up to 7.5 feet or 2.3 meters. They're very rarely spotted, which just makes this footage even more incredible. This deep-sea diver was bitten by a shark, but an unlikely ally came to his rescue. Take a look. Here we see a shark latched onto this dude's leg. Now, luckily it's a very small shark, but I don't think there's any such thing as a good or even okay shark attack. Nobody wants this. Attached to the small shark though is a grouper, much bigger than the shark. Was the grouper just glad to find an easy meal? Yeah, but I'd like to believe that it saw an innocent man being attacked and swooped in to help. Then we watch as it pulls the shark off the diver and swims into the shadows to enjoy its meal. Now this is an absolute beast of a creature. This is a blunt-nosed 6-gill shark captured on video in 2019, but if I didn't know any better, based on that tail, I'd think it was the Loch Ness Monster. So OceanX, in partnership with Cape Eleuthera Institute and a team of scientists, managed to make history by tagging a deep-sea shark from a submarine for the very first time. They were after a pretty elusive creature, the blunt-nosed 6-gill shark. This shark is ancient, really ancient. It's been around longer than most dinosaurs. The lead scientist on the mission was Dr. Dean Grubbs from the Florida State University's Marine Lab. He's been working on studying these sharks for years, but until now, the only way to tag one was by bringing it up to the surface. Not exactly the most ideal way to track an animal that spends its life in the deepest, darkest parts of the ocean. But this time, they did something no one had done before. They managed to tag the creature while it was still deep underwater using a submarine. It's a huge step forward in studying these deep-sea predators, and now they have a way to track their movements without disturbing their environment too much. Pretty amazing and an absolutely wild piece of footage. What you're looking at here is not the tripod alien from War of the Worlds. This is a Magnapina squid, or a big fin squid, captured in the Central Pacific Ocean back in 2019 at a depth of 1,092 meters or 3,582 feet, courtesy of the Schmidt Ocean Institute. Big fin squids are just nuts looking. As you can see, its arms and tentacles are way longer than its body. They can stretch out 13 to 26 feet or 4 to 8 meters. These things also move in a really weird way. It doesn't really swim like other squids, darting through the water with speed. Instead, it sort of floats along with its arms stretched out, almost like it's just hovering or gliding. And since it lives so far down, way deeper than most submarines can reach, these creatures are hard to study. That's why not much is known about them. But whenever it's caught on camera, it always leaves people a little freaked out. It's not just the long arms, it's the way it moves and just how generally alien it looks. Alright, now this creature wasn't filmed by a submarine, but it was just too creepy looking not to show. So apparently this horrid looking monster is called a purple eel gobby. Now at first, I thought this was a creature with multiple heads, which would have been awesome. That is not the case though, sadly. This is just a group of them gathered together. Still though, these things look like they crawled out of the upside down. They also look like they'd crawl into your body and eat you from the inside, but luckily they're more interested in small fish and crustaceans. Early in 2024, an amazing deep-sea expedition uncovered possibly over 100 new species off the coast of Chile. Between January 8th and February 11th, researchers aboard the Schmidt Ocean Institute's research vessel Falkor 2 explored the seafloor. The expedition, called Seamounts of the Southeast Pacific, focused on underwater mountains, or seamounts, in 3 main areas. The Nazca and Salas y Gomez ridges, which stretch 1,800 miles from Chile to eastern Island, and the Juan Fernandez and Nazca Desventuradas marine parks. During the expedition, the team mapped the ocean floor and discovered 4 previously unknown seamounts. The largest was 11,581 feet, or 3,530 meters above the seafloor, and just to put that into perspective, that's more than 4 times the height of the Burj Khalifa, the world's tallest building. And as I said before, they also discovered more than 100 previously undiscovered species. There were all sorts of corals, sponges, sea urchins, mollusks, and crustaceans. Lead scientist Javier Salinas, a marine biologist, said, "We far exceeded our hopes on this expedition. The amount we found, especially for some groups like sponges, is mind-blowing." What you're looking at here is a comb jelly. As alien as it looks though, it may actually be able to give us some insight into the human brain. A recent study funded by the US National Science Foundation has uncovered how ocean creatures, specifically comb jellies, have adapted to survive in radically different environments, i.e. shallow waters versus the extreme depths of the ocean. The research revealed that deep sea and shallow water comb jellies have different types of lipid molecules in their cell membranes. These lipids help the creature's cells stay stable in their environments. For deep sea comb jellies, the high pressure of the ocean floor keeps their cell membranes intact, but if brought to the surface, the lack of pressure causes their membranes to break down and the jellyfish basically turn into goo. On the flip side, shallow water comb jellies have membranes that are too rigid to function properly under the extreme pressures of the deep sea. So what does this mean for us? Well, the deep sea comb jellies membranes are made up of plasmalogens, a type of lipid which is also found in the human brain. In humans, a loss of plasmalogens has been linked to diseases like Alzheimer's. So the researchers are hoping that with more research, they'll be able to better understand these lipids' role in our brains, and by extension, how diseases of the brain develop. Deep sea mining was really called into question this past summer. Researchers found that oxygen is being produced deep in the ocean from small metallic nodules on the sea floor. This is a pretty amazing find because before we thought that oxygen was only produced through photosynthesis, which relies on sunlight, of course. Professor Andrew Sweetman, who led the study, said for aerobic life to begin on the planet there had to be oxygen. But we now know that there is oxygen produced in the deep sea, where there is no light. The discovery came while the team was studying the potential effects of deep sea mining in the Clarion-Clipperton Zone between Hawaii and Mexico. The nodules they sampled had an electric charge high enough to split seawater into hydrogen and oxygen, which Sweetman described as, quote, effectively batteries in a rock. So obviously this finding makes deep sea mining more controversial than it already is. On one hand, some think mining the ocean floor is really important for gathering minerals that are needed for a transition into more green energy, but a lot of oceanographers are worried that we just don't fully understand the impact this could have on deep sea ecosystems, and that's becoming even more apparent with this recent find. Also in 2024, 6 new species of carnivorous sea sponges were discovered. Marine biologists using an ROV, remotely operated vehicle, found the 6 new species off the coast of Western Australia. The sponges belong to the Cladio something family. Just put it up on screen, Vincent. I can't pronounce it. The sponges belong to this family here that I'm not going to bother trying to pronounce, and this discovery puts the total number of this family in Australia at 41. I cannot pronounce the names of these things individually either, but we can show you some of them. There's this one, then you got this one here, and you can't forget about this guy. They were found in 2 deep sea locations, the Bremer Canyon system, where one of the new species was discovered, and Cape Range Canyon, where the other 5 were found. Dr. Jim Thompson, CEO of Queensland Museum, said these new to science species enhance our knowledge of this family and highlight the importance of ongoing exploration and conservation of marine biodiversity. Now, what used to happen is scientists would collect carnivorous sponges by trawling the ocean floor, but because of advancements in ROV technology, now they can just look at these creatures in their natural habitats, all from the comfort of their office desks, which is pretty incredible. In March of 2024, a 45-day deep-sea expedition to the Clarion-Clipperton Zone between Mexico and Hawaii uncovered some very bizarre but fascinating creatures too. Thomas Dahlgren, a marine ecologist from the University of Gothenburg, was part of the team aboard the British research vessel and stated, quote, "These areas are the Earth's least explored. It's estimated that only 1 out of 10 animal species living down here has been described by science." The team explored the abyssal plains, deep sea regions at depths of 3,500 to 5,500 meters. Despite covering more than half of the Earth's surface, we really don't know much about the life down there. Dahlgren described the excitement of discovering new species like it was the 18th century all over again. The animals in these extreme depths survive on very little food, mostly organic debris called marine snow falling from the surface, so the population is mostly made up of filter feeders like sponges and sediment feeders like sea cucumbers. The team used an ROV to capture footage and collect samples. Some of their coolest discoveries were bowl-shaped sponges and a pink sea cucumber known as a sea pig. Dahlgren went on to say these sea cucumbers were some of the largest animals found on this expedition. They act as ocean floor vacuum cleaners. The team also photographed a cup-shaped glass sponge thought to live up to 15,000 years. What you're looking at here is an object used to sample water deep in the ocean. It's called a Conductivity, Temperature, and Depth Rosette, or CTD. It was recently used to study the ocean's twilight zone, a deep, dark region 200 to 1,000 meters below the surface. Scientists found that this area is not only low in light, but also iron deficient, a condition that affects the growth of bacteria. So to survive, these bacteria produce special molecules called siderophores, which help them gather tiny amounts of iron from the surrounding water. The study focused on the Pacific Ocean, setting out to see how these bacteria adjust to the harsh environment. Tim Conway, an associate professor of chemical oceanography, explained, understanding the organisms that facilitate carbon uptake in the ocean is important for understanding the impacts of climate change. When organic matter from the surface ocean descends to the deep ocean, it acts as a biological pump that removes carbon from the atmosphere and stores it in seawater and sediments. The researchers collected water samples during an expedition from Alaska to Tahiti and were surprised by their findings. Not only did they discover high levels of siderophores in surface waters, but they also found them in the twilight zone, an area where iron was expected to have very little impact on the growth of bacteria. Conway went on to say, unlike in surface waters, we did not expect to find siderophores in the ocean's twilight zone. This discovery is helping them understand the ocean's role in carbon storage. This year, scientists discovered all these ecosystems in the volcanic caves under hydrothermal vents on the seafloor. During a 30-day expedition aboard the Schmidt Ocean Institute's research vessel Falkor 2, the team explored an undersea volcano along the East Pacific Rise where two tectonic plates meet. The area is known for its hydrothermal vents, which are underwater openings where seawater and hot magma combine to create these natural hot springs. Around these vents, sea life like tube worms, mussels, and bacteria live in the extreme conditions. But what the researchers didn't expect to find were large communities living in caves below these vents. Using the remotely operated vehicle Submersible, they discovered caves filled with giant tube worms, some reaching up to over 1.5 feet long, along with snails and other animals. Dr. Sabine Kallner, a marine biologist involved in the study, called it, quote, mind-blowing to see animals living beneath the vents. And for years, scientists have studied vent ecosystems, but life below them was mostly a mystery. This year, scientists continued researching the possibility of a hidden ocean deep beneath our feet, and they may have gotten closer than ever to the truth. About 400 miles below the Earth's surface, there is a massive reservoir of water trapped in a rock called ringwoodite. While scientists knew that water could be stored inside the mantle rocks, they never imagined it could exist in such a mysterious form. Instead of being a solid liquid or gas, the water is held in a sponge-like structure in the rock. Geophysicist Steve Jacobson, who is part of the research team, explained, the ringwoodite is like a sponge soaking up water. There's something very special about the crystal structure of ringwoodite that allows it to attract hydrogen and trap water. The study, titled Dehydration Melting at the Top of the Lower Mantle, showed that this water could make up a big amount of the Earth's total water supply. Scientists found the hidden water by studying seismic waves from earthquakes, which revealed that the waves were interacting with the water trapped in ringwoodite. And here's something really nuts. If this rock contains just 1% water, it would mean the Earth has 3 times as much water deep below the surface as all the oceans combined. Well, this thing looks creepy. Earlier this year, a team of researchers from China set out on an expedition to the northwestern Pacific Ocean to explore the depths around the Caroline Plate, an area off the coast of the Philippines. They weren't diving themselves, but instead used an underwater robot to explore the area and collect tiny creatures from the ocean floor. And when the robot pulled up a sample from a seamount, among the tiny critters they found was a pregnant amphipod, a type of shrimp-like creature that's just a few millimeters long. But this wasn't like any amphipod they'd ever seen. This was a brand new species, now been dubbed Esoris carolinus. It's an interesting but again very creepy looking creature. Good thing it's so small. The eyes in particular were noted as being large and very well pigmented, which helped it stand out among the other species that live in these deep waters. And here's the really interesting part. When the researchers looked inside its body, they found 9 baby amphipods growing inside her. This footage here was captured in 2015, a never-before-seen species of squid. So a group of researchers from the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute, Guillermo Helmholtz Center for Ocean Research Kiel, and the University of South Florida teamed up for an expedition in the Gulf of California off Mexico's west coast. Using a remotely operated vehicle, the team was able to dive as deep as 8,000 feet without ever leaving the surface and without disturbing the creature's environment. The team managed to capture a large squid on camera, but soon they noticed something strange about this one. The squid was carrying dozens of giant eggs, around 30 to 40 of them, each about half an inch across. Now, squids of the species they thought this mother was, called gonatids, usually carry eggs that are only about a fifth of an inch in diameter, so these were much bigger. They'd never seen eggs this large in any gonatid squid before, and there's no other squid known to carry eggs of this size. So the researchers figured there was a very good chance they discovered a brand new species altogether. Pictured here is a brand new species of fish found in Africa. Earlier this year in Zambia, a strange creature was spotted swimming through a river, heading straight for a bridge. Scientists pulled the creature from the water, at first having no idea what they just found, while it turned out they discovered a brand new species. The team had been in the middle of a project studying a group of fish called nanocharax, more commonly known as darters. They were looking at preserved specimens collected from rivers in South Africa when something odd started to stand out. The fish from a few specific rivers, mostly caught in 2005, had a distinct pattern that was different from the usual darters they were used to. These fish had a unique scale pattern and a banded coloring that immediately caught the researchers' attention. And after further investigation, they realized that they'd uncovered a completely new species dubbed Nanocharax skeltoni, or Skelton's darter fish. They decided to name the species after Paul Harvey Skelton, a renowned professor at the South African Institute for Aquatic Biodiversity. A study came out this past April about a brand new species of jellyfish discovered off the coast of Florida, pictured here. Peter Schuchert and Richard Collins carried out 91 nighttime scuba dives near Palm Beach over the course of years, and they found some pretty cool stuff, like, just some never before seen jellyfish, for example. After photographing the creatures and capturing 2 of them, they took a closer look and realized they'd found a new species which was soon dubbed Zancleopsis grandis, or the large Zancleopsis jellyfish. These things are just over an inch tall with tentacles stretching more than 2 inches in length. The body itself has a long, narrow shape that shifts as the jellyfish moves through the water. The researchers named it grandis because of the relatively large size and the big bulbs on its tentacles, and just like other jellyfish, Zancleopsis grandis uses jet propulsion to move. It sucks in water and then squirts it back out through a small opening, propelling itself forward through the water. Kinda crazy that these new things were found in Florida. As Collins put it, part of the work we are doing is to demonstrate and document the amazing oceanic biodiversity here in Florida. Florida waters are well studied relative to most of the world's oceans, and yet there is still so much to learn and discover. And yeah, that is crazy because Florida, right? And then you got all this vast water over so much of the earth. Like, who knows what crazy stuff could be out there. Now, this is the first and only piece of footage ever captured of a living genus of squid called this. Just earlier this year, the Schmidt Ocean Institute led a team of oceanographers on an expedition to some of the remotest parts of the southeastern Pacific Ocean. During their month-long mission, they came across 20 never-before-seen species and another 80 that were observed in this part of the ocean for the first time. These squids have only ever been seen on the surface, i.e. they've been brought up in nets, dead. We've never seen one alive swimming around in its natural habitat, so this was pretty amazing to see. And there haven't even been that many specimens of these creatures either. It's such a rare genus that we've only had like a few specimens, and a lot of them came from the late 1800s. Sea cucumbers don't really sound all that scary, but I mean, just look at this one. This is what's called a brown-ringed sea cucumber, and it was just discovered. Scientists on a submarine were exploring the South China Sea when they spotted this small, reddish sea creature. It didn't quite look like anything they'd seen before, and as it turns out, it wasn't anything they'd seen before. It was found during a series of dives between 2018 and 2023, using a manned submersible. When the team surfaced and had a chance to study the creature, which had something like 20 tentacles and over 72 feet, they realized that they'd uncovered a new animal and gave it this crazy name that, again, I can't even begin to pronounce. AKA the brown-ringed sea cucumber, though. This new species of sea cucumber can grow to about 8 inches long and around 2 inches wide, and this wasn't all they found either. Yanlu Zhao and Haibin Zhang, part of the research team, also discovered 2 more new species of sea cucumber on the same expedition. Next up, we have another story that came out this past April about a new creature discovered off the southern tip of China. Just what is this thing? An ancient wood carving? Well, no, it's actually the shell of a living animal. A research team from China was exploring a deep sea area called the Haima Cold Seep off the coast of Hainan Island when their underwater robot picked up something from the sea floor. It was a shell, and at first the researchers didn't really think much of it, but once they took a closer look, they were like, well, actually, what exactly is this thing? The shell belonged to a type of mollusk known for living in extreme environments, like cold seeps. These are special areas on the seafloor where chemicals like methane and hydrogen sulfide leak up from the Earth's crust, creating this chemically rich water that only very specific life forms can survive in. This weird shell was just over 4 inches long and had a, quote, robust and rectangular shape. The mollusk's foot, the part that sticks out from the shell when it wants to move around, was described as large with an oval sole. But it was really the shape of the shell that made this thing so unique. It's the fact that it's rectangular. Other species' shells are usually curved inward on the ends. Just look at how gorgeous this snail is. On the coastlines of Japan, a tiny new species of sea creature has been found. Hiroshi Fukuda, a researcher and associate professor at Okayama University, first came across these rare snails over 30 years ago when he was still a student. They were actually relatively well known in Japan, but had never been formally documented until last year. Fukuda studied dozens of these snails and ended up naming them this. And luckily, it has a much easier to pronounce nickname, the strange dwarf snail. These snails are tiny, measuring less than 1/10 of an inch long, and Fukuda described these snails as bizarre. These things are small, but they move around quickly, crawling in step-like movements. Fukuda wrote in his paper that they're usually found crawling on muddy walls of earthworm and crab burrows, which might be why they were overlooked for such a long time. This strange-looking animal was discovered in an underwater cave. A team of researchers recently discovered a brand new species of hermit crab in a dark underwater cave in Japan, about 100 feet from the entrance. The 3-person team found this tiny critter in just about 3 feet of water. After carefully examining the male specimen, they realized they had come across a new species. This is its name, also called this. Not even the alternate name is easy to say. This new species is incredibly small though, measuring less than 1 centimeter long. Aw, that's cute. What really set it apart from other hermit crabs were its claws. They were described as strongly unequal and dissimilar. The right claw is moderately slender, the left claw is much smaller, only about half the size of the right one. And this last thing looks like it just hurts. There's like little spines and spikes on it. In March of 2021, researchers took a deep dive into the South China Sea using a manned submersible. During one of their dives, they came across a large crab sitting on some coral. They captured the creature and brought it back to study. Until then, this was a never-before documented species, which was later dubbed Gordonopsis mazupo. Finally, a scientific name that I can actually get my lips around. But they're also known as Mazu's porter crab. This new species is considered pretty big for a crab. Its body is about 1.2 inches long, with legs stretching more than 3.5 inches. When you include its legs, the crab measures over 8 inches across in total. Its claws are especially interesting, described as blade-like. The researchers named it Gordonopsis mazupo after Mazu, the Chinese goddess or grandmother of the sea. And so far, only one of these things has ever been found.